This session is derived from feedback we've received from you guys in the past. So anyone who's ever attended a Northern Powergrid community energy session will have been asked, what would you like to cover at future sessions? And the top thing that we wanted to cover this time, or that you said you wanted to cover, was community renewable electricity and heat generation projects. So we've got this panel of experts together to help you understand what you need to learn about this area. And these guys are kind of primed in an open source way to respond to whatever questions you want to ask. So it's going to be hopefully quite light on PowerPointing, hopefully won't be presenting too much to you, because the second half of today is all about that interaction and that open panel session where you get to ask the questions that you need to and hopefully get the information and knowledge that you need. So as I say, this session about community renewables in a climate emergency has come directly from you asking us to run it. It's part of a series of work that we've been doing at Regen with Northern Powergrid on helping communities engage more with Northern Powergrid. And that work has been going on for well over a year now. Any new renewable electricity and some heat projects will involve interaction with Northern Powergrid or your local distribution network operator if you're not in Northern Powergrid's area, to connect to the network. But there's so much more that you guys can get out of working alongside Northern Powergrid and collaborating as much as you can, because it's going to take all of us to be more creative and more ingenious with how we run our projects to make them work in future. And communities are a really big part of that. They play a really important part in engaging everyone in this transition and ensuring that no one is left behind in the climate emergency. As part of the work that Northern Powergrid do, they, as well as all of the forums, which hopefully some of you have been to already, and some of the training sessions we've been running recently with Northern Powergrid, they also have a community partnering fund, which is going to open on the 28th of June and is run by or facilitated by the Leeds Community Foundation. And so I'll post that in the chat in a minute so you can see that link. So that's one way that Northern Powergrid can absolutely support you with your projects, particularly if you're at an early stage of your project. The session, as I say, is designed to bring you inspiration, knowledge, and support you with your own projects. We can only decarbonise at the pace and scale we need to if we bring everyone with us. And that's where community energy organisations play a critical role in engaging everyone in the net zero transition. So I'm going to just have a quick look at the agenda before I hand over to Anda. So Kai, if you could flag that up now, that'd be great. So we've got updates from Anda, updates from Community Energy England, was part of Community Energy Fortnight this week, this forum. So it's really great, as I say, to see so many of you here. We're then going to hear from Sue. So Sue has been working as part of Circular Malton and Norton. This is an area that has been under scrutiny for fracking. So really interesting to hear from Sue about what's going on in a more proactive and positive community light in terms of energy in this area. And then we go straight into our interactive workshops after letting you go and forage in your kitchens for some tea and cake. The feedback's really essential to us. So if you do have to leave early, please post any feedback in the chat. We really do use that feedback to inform what we do in future sessions. So that's our agenda for today. Thank you so much for joining us. And I'm going to hand over to Anda.
Jodie, thank you very much. What an introduction. I think you've summarized it really well, why we're engaging with community energy groups and all of you in the room. I'm not going to cover that, but I'm going to just say again, thank you for joining us today. What I aim to do in this very short speaking slot is to cover what we've done between the last Community Energy Forum, which we ran, I believe, last November, and today, and kind of look a bit more widely. So you can see on the slide here this neat little infographic. We've been looking in spring 2020. We published our community energy engagement strategy, where we took 26 actions to support local community energy groups and to engage with them, advocate for them, empower them and provide them with those tools to kind of be more successful, to see more growth in the community energy sector across our area, which is Northeast Yorkshire and Northern Lincolnshire. We were looking back at the progress made since, so in the last year, in the year since publishing the strategy, and I was really pleased and positively surprised to see that the wealth of engagement that we've had and what we've done in that first year, where we've completed 19 of 26 actions, and we're making significant progress on the others, which are ongoing actions due to close in 2023, and where we're committed on annual targets, if you like. So this image provides you kind of with an overview of what we've done. I'll call out a few things, but I also mentioned that there is more detail on the progress made on our webpage, and also you can access the community engagement strategy from our community energy page. And I'm hoping one of the colleagues drops that in the chat for those who've not been aware of the page and like to visit or get on straight to reading this update while I speak. So in summary, we've looked at what we've done over the past year, and we've realized we're actually engaged with a fantastic amount of about 3,000 people across the whole year. I think for comparison, I think I'll probably need to highlight that when we published the strategy, or before we published the strategy, we knew about 20 groups across our region. Today we have over 50 that we are aware of, and there are probably more out there, and maybe some of you are starting new groups today. But this has really shown how there is a lot of ambition and appetite to tackle net zero, to do something locally, and really we're hoping that the tools and kind of engagement opportunities we're providing are helping you as well. We've heard a lot of really useful, really rich feedback through the events that we've organized. We've had community energy forums running last year. We'll continue running them this year and the next year as well. We've established a community energy stakeholder panel as a scrutiny group that allows us to kind of sense check our thinking and our support for community energy and related themes as well. In these forums over the past year, we've had 167 participants. I'm really happy to add 51 people for that today. We've spent a lot of time also speaking with you directly via an email, via phone, via Zoom over the past year, and we've been sharing quarterly newsletters. So those are all things that we're committed to do now and in the future, and those are all things available to you. Also looking at what we've done last year, we've done more in some occasions where we've realized there is a need, or there is a gap in kind of what we've set out in the early spring, and Jody already mentioned the training sessions that we've carried out. In fact, I think we've done so many things that our community energy page that I'm signposting you to is slightly out of date, so we'll be tackling that very shortly. But to sum it up, it's been a fantastic year of speaking with you, learning from you, learning about the work you do, and hopefully answering your questions and supporting you any way we can. I was truly privileged that at the end of the year, then the UK Parliament's Environmental Audit Committee launched an inquiry into community energy, asking about this role into net zero. We were able to submit a response to the call of evidence, summarizing all the things you've said, what needs to happen in community energy sector to help it proliferate and grow, and all the barriers that you face that you've told us about. And I'm truly privileged to be invited then to give evidence in the oral evidence session later on, which happened early this year. So this is just to demonstrate that we're really committed to advocating for you, but also that the feedback you give us really matters, and we were able to channel that into providing this evidence to the MPs, which is a fantastic opportunity, and we're really kind of following and seeing what comes out of it, and hopefully that is a catalyst for some positive change for the sector and for net zero transition as well. Could you please take me to the next slide, and I'll tell you about more things that are going on, kind of looking wider at our operations. So as a distribution network operator, we're a regulated business. We regulate in kind of in time intervals called price controls. And we're at the moment, we're right in the crunch time of getting ready and writing up everything, our draft plans for the next price control period, which will start in 2023 and to 2028. And we need to submit our draft plan to a regulator of Ofgem next month. So we're really in those stages at the moment. We know that this period from 2023 to 2028 in the 20s is a very critical stage for us getting to net zero, especially where a number of you and a number of local authorities are targeting net zero early, some of them targeting by 2030 or 2040. So it's a very, by 2028, we really need to make sure we're on the right foot for enabling that to happen. We are able to facilitate the changes in electrical demand that we will see in those places. And on the next slide, I'll lay out some of the thinking. So decarbonization is a biggest driver for change, I think, probably across the sector, and it's absolutely at the center of our plan, keeping us well busy over the past few years. In our draft plan, therefore, we've taken actions and we've written our proposals by listening to all of you over the past 2 or 3 years, if not more, which has helped shape them. And we've recognized we need to build a bigger network to enable decarbonization. So there will be a lot of a significant uptick in the investment required to get us to net zero. We fully recognize that. But at the same time, we're committed to use our customers' money efficiently, and we're committed to use that investment efficiently by using flexibility solutions first where we can, which really means that allows us to use the existing infrastructure and keep the cost and the carbon down. And that was either network flexibility or customer flexibility. But I won't go into detail about that. We'll see all that written in our July plan, which will be published in July. We also have heard there's a lot of ambition to decarbonize for many stakeholders. It's earlier than 2050 where they want to get to. But there's still about a lot of uncertainty about what pathway of decarbonization is going to unfold. Specifically, that there's quite a significant uncertainty about heating. So we're drafting our plan in a way that it is ambitious enough to keep all potential decarbonization pathways open. And by that we mean we're able to facilitate those who are aiming for 2030 and those that are aiming for 2050, depending on what actually happens between 2023 and 2028. We're able to enable your decarbonization plans, and it ensures that where our stakeholders are more ambitious, we are supporting them instead of being a hindrance. And there are some specific things that I probably want to mention on the next slide. That might be of interest for people in this group. So I've mentioned the first few boxes. We foresee that there's going to be additional network investment required as we're expecting a lot of more low carbon technologies like vehicles and heat pumps to be connected. When in some places we will need a larger, thicker network. We're also going to facilitate the uptake of low carbon technologies by using flexibility, being efficient about how we use our infrastructure, and working with customers procuring flexibility where we can use that instead of investment, because it's just much more cost effective and also a lower carbon solution. But we know that there's a lot of local planning for net zero taking place. I've just summarized how there's a lot of new community energy groups we've also seen coming forward in the last year or so. And what we've consistently heard is that you want to talk with us more often. You want to have more strategic conversations with us. You want to draw on our expertise, and you think we have a role in supporting you, and not just at the point when you're applying for a connection. So to facilitate all those conversations and that work that needs to happen in 2020s, we're proposing to add more people to our teams with the right expertise to help you. And that will be a number of people to support local net zero planning, as well as regional community energy advisors who'd be able to support stakeholders like yourselves. I'm really interested to hear what you think would be in the remit of those roles, and we're interested in shaping them with you. We also heard a lot that people think we have a role for awareness raising about net zero, and we're keen to do our fair share of that. And we've recently been launching launched with other partners a net zero SME portal, which advises small and medium sized businesses and provides them information to equip them in coming up with their own net zero plans. So when we see that area as something that we continue to evolve over the 2020s. There's much more than that, and much more I can possibly cover in this slot. So I would invite everyone who's interested in the detail to have a look for early July when we publish our draft plans, where you'll find how we're planning to do that and all the specifics then. And we will be looking to understand your feedback on those specifics and on those high level details later in the year as we finalize the plan. And the final slide, please, I hope, is one that Jodie already mentioned at the beginning, and rightly so. Very excited to announce that finally we have an event that's kind of well aligned in timelines, when our community partnering fund is opening shortly later this month. So I'd really invite those groups who think who'd benefit from this, or know somebody who could benefit from this to apply, please, through the Leeds Community Foundation, and you can find all the guidance there as well. And I will stop there for my update. Thank you very much, Jodie.
Thanks, Amanda. That was a really good run through, and congratulations again on speaking to the Parliamentary Committee, Environmental Audit Committee on Community Energy. That response, if you haven't read Anda's response, is exemplary in terms of a distribution network operator listening to communities and then summing up what the barriers are and reporting that back to government. That was a really, really useful piece of work. And on top of that, the launch of this Community Energy Fund couldn't come at a better time, really, when we know that we've seen so many more new organisations coming to this arena, wanting to develop low carbon projects. And this fund is really aimed at those kind of newer groups who are setting up. And as we see the end, or we don't really know what's going to happen next with the Rural Community Energy Fund, but this fund is one of the only funds out there at the moment for new organisations setting up to do community energy and low carbon technology projects. So yeah, really commend Northern Powergrid for all of that excellent work, and well done, Amanda, specifically for getting that Environmental Audit Committee submission in and speaking at that. Next up, I'm going to hand over to Philip. So Philip works at Community Energy England. We've been working closely with him and his team recently on the upcoming State of the Sector report, and he's going to give you a little bit of an update about what's going on during Community Energy Fortnight. Philip.
Thank you, Jodie, and yeah, it's good to be here. Great to see so many people in the patches. We're based in Sheffield, so although cover the whole of England, but so it's nice to see so many other kind of Yorkshire and North East people. So yes, I have a lot that I could say. I'll try and keep it fairly brief because we've got lots to cover today, but there is lots going on in Community Energy Fortnight, and I would love to kind of enthuse you all about it. Kai, if you go to the next one for me, I'll just introduce Community Energy England. If you haven't heard of us, which I recognise is possible, even though we try to be the voice of the community energy sector. Our vision and mission are up there. I put those up just to kind of let you know what we're trying to do on behalf of probably a lot of people that are here, we try to represent the community energy sector and help it grow. Basically, we have two ways that we do that, which is to focus on the policy and advocacy side, where we work with government to try and lobby for more supportive policy environment that will help community energy grow. And we try to help community energy organisations themselves connect with each other, learn, share expertise, learn about innovations and how to progress. So you can see our members are all over the country. So there was a message in the chat just before about whether there's a register of recognised community energy groups, but there isn't as such, but on our website we've got our members, and that's quite a good way to find out most of the community energy organisations that are in England. We have about 270 plus members and lots of collaborations. So that's our role within the sector. We are here to help organisations like yourselves. If you go to the next one for me, Kai. One of the things that we do every year to try and help kind of energize, enthuse the sector and celebrate all the things that all these amazing people do around the country is Community Energy Fortnight. The theme this year, as you can see there, is We the Power, which is kind of a bit of a what goes in the middle there. Community energy is full of amazing people who drive very hard to create change and to combat climate change. And we sort of want the inspiration to fire this year, because as was mentioned, there are a lot of people on this call, there are a lot of other people's on meetings that we've kind of events and things that we've been having recently, and there's definitely a real buzz around the sector despite a challenging environment on the policy side. So yeah, have a think about what's going on, connect up to a movement as well. And that's the other thing about the fortnight, is that community energy is by definition local and can be isolated when people are trying to get started and figure out what it is that they can do in their local area. But you're not alone, you're part of a huge national community of people, thousands and thousands of volunteers and other people who are supporting the sector, and there's just a lot going on. There's people who've probably done what you're trying to do before. There's expertise to share, there's people to learn from, and there are many ways that we try to help facilitate that. But the fortnight is just a moment where people come together to put on lots of events and do other things. So I'm just going to run through a few of them. Kai, if you go again for me. So we've got lots of events coming up. The ones that I picked out, 80 more, so quite a lot, but the ones I picked out that I thought might be relevant for people, all of this is on our website. If you scan the QR code that I'm very pleased with myself for making, it's on the screen there, and that'll take you to the website. But with what's coming up that I thought might be most useful for you, there's a launch of a report on the benefits of community energy. So some of you might be here trying to understand what community energy is and how it might connect or be useful to you if you're a local authority, for example, or a local business. So there's a launch of a report onto the benefits. There's a guide to a community scale carbon footprint tool, which is being released by the Centre for Sustainable Energy. And again, that might be helpful if you're trying to figure out what the benefits are that you kind of climate action in your local area will achieve. There's an introduction to heat pumps. There's several events about energy efficiency, which is increasingly important to community energy. And we've got 2 events about financing community energy. One of those is by Thrive, who are one of the sponsors of the fortnight. And we've got lots of new blogs coming up. We've already had some from Power to Change, Orchard Community Energy, and the Energy Networks Association. We've got coming up is other community energy organisations, and Triodos Bank, Cooperatives UK. So there's people coming from lots of angles in terms of what community energy is, what it does, all these different stakeholders and supporters. If you're a social media kind of person, then we have Twitter takeovers, which are interesting ways to kind of get an insight into another organisation that's active in the sector. That's kind of where we hand over our Twitter account for someone else to use for an hour. Lots of videos coming out from the Next Generation project. So if you're an active community energy organisation and you're kind of wondering what to do next, Next Generation is a really innovative project which has been funded by Power to Change, and they're working with a lot of different community energy organisations to help them develop new business models, try new things, and kind of figure out what's coming next in community energy. So they've got a lot of learning and resources that might be helpful to you as well. That is not quite the sum of the parts of Community Energy Fortnight, but that's a lot of what's going on. So we really hope that it will inspire you to get involved if you're not already, that it will encourage you to try new community energy activities, set up a new project or a service, and also take personal actions in your own life about energy. We also have a kind of underlying theme of what's We the Power. We the Power is we want to talk to government and tell them what we're trying to do here in the sector, what community energy can do, and remove the barriers that are standing in the way of community energy and increase the support for all of these people who are trying really hard to take action in their communities on energy and climate change. So there's a political kind of thread underpinning it, and we always welcome people who want to support our work on the policy side with community energy. Kai, if you just skip forward, I'll be able to finish by past or just after if I whiz through this. So yeah, Jodie mentioned State of the Sector. So Prina there on the call has been a champion of helping us get through State of the Sector and pull in all of the data. So State of the Sector is something that we do every year to gather data about the community energy sector. We've expanded it this year working with Community Energy Scotland, so it's a fully UK report. Yeah, the idea is basically that it gives a full picture of the sector across the country. As I mentioned, it's a very distributed sector where it can be hard to see what's going on the full scale. So that's what we try to do is produce that and have a robust data set that means that we can talk to all sorts of different stakeholders and policy people about what the sector is doing and what its potential is. Now, I realise you might be wondering why you should care about that, but I think that State of the Sector will be useful to you. If you want data about community energy, you might want to understand what it is that community energy offers, and this report will tell you. It will show you, again, how you might fit into a national movement, and if you're trying to demonstrate to funders or local authorities or other partners what community energy is and what it can do, then State of the Sector expands your world into a bigger one, and it will show you the kinds of benefits, the kind of impacts that community energy can have, and it will give you data if you need to try and justify that to anybody. And hopefully it will inspire you too, because as I said, there's all sorts of things going on all over the country. State of the Sector will tell you a bit more about what those are. It will hopefully inspire you to try some new things, like have you ever thought of doing an EV car club in your village, for example, or trying to do an energy efficiency advice line that will really help the most vulnerable people in your community. There are all these things you might not know about that you can kind of explore and find out a bit more about starting the State of the Sector. We're launching it on Wednesday. There's a little link there, and I'd love you to come along and hear more about it. Kai, I'll just do my last slide really quickly, which is all sorts of support that we give to community energy organisations. If you take a photo of that slide, probably is easiest. All those are little links. You can just type those in, and they'll take you to different pages. Funding was mentioned, and the funding page is always the most popular on our website. So that's where we try to list all things like the fund that Anna mentioned. We try to gather them all together, everything that we can find, which might be helpful for you if you're trying to find funding for community energy. So I'll stop there. Thank you very much. And yeah, just huge encouragement for getting involved and taking sort of steps forward with community energy.
Brilliant. Thanks, Philip. Yeah, really useful to hear a little run through there of some of the things you've been up to. Great work on putting together a Community Energy Fortnight. And as Philip mentioned, State of the Sector will be launched next Wednesday. Do dial into that session. Prina and Frankie at Regen, who've been working, pulling together all of that data and reports, will be presenting on that alongside Community Energy England and Wales and Scotland, and some of the DNOs, including Northern Powergrid, who supported that work. So thanks, Philip, that's really helpful. Next up, we have Sue Jefferson from Circular Malton and Norton. Sue was on our recent training session, and we thought, this sounds like a very interesting project that you might like to all hear about. She has been working on an AD project and is working towards developing a circular economy town with a big focus on engagement, which is one of the things when communities think about doing energy generation projects or heat projects, quite often they get quite technical quite quickly and forget about bringing their community along with them. So Sue's done some really exemplary work on that with her group, and I'm going to hand over to Sue now.
Thanks very much, Jodie. So yes, as Jodie's explained, what I'm going to do, Kai, if you can just move on, because I think it shares what I'm going to try and cover is basically try and share with you what we're doing and why with the whole circular piece, how we're doing it, particularly the role of the AD project that we're doing and how it's working, and just share some tips and learnings that we've got to share. And I'll probably talk for about 20 minutes. We've got 10 minutes for questions, but also put questions in the chat, and also I'm happy if people want to follow up afterwards as well. Okay, thanks, Kai. Moving on. I know some people are quite local and will know of Malton and Norton, but for those of you who don't, well, market towns were split by a river. You know, this is as good as my slides get really on pictures. And Malton has repositioned itself as Yorkshire's food capital and done a lot of work on what we call makers and markets and producers. And Norton's on the other side of the river. That has a huge horse racing or training piece, so very rural and quite distinct. And we are very much Malton and Norton looking to leverage and bring together both parts. So that's kind of us. Moving on again. Where this concept came about, we're a pilot project for the York and North Yorkshire LEP, which has set a very big ambition to be carbon negative by 2038, but to be thriving as a region, both with carbon negative and with the circular economy. And I think what's important is to highlight that's kind of got different wins. So it's not just about the environment. Businesses and the economy's got to be thriving, society's got to be thriving with it as well. So we're part of Circular Yorkshire, and I've got a link at the end for you to look at. But that's where we were kind of came from. Like an idea was, let's see if this on a kind of more micro scale will work, because it's very difficult to take it on as a whole region. So thank you again, Kai. So our vision is very much, this is the end in mind. We want to be a successful, thriving market town. Market towns have been like on a downward trend for quite a while, and this is to kind of rejuvenate, and this circular economy is the way to do that. And we're not going to see it through just ourselves, but our mission is very much create this culture of collaboration and a legacy that prospers from that. And I would also say this isn't about talking and working just with environmental activists. This is actually the people who are saying, I know I should do something, I want to do something, but there's lots of things that mean they're not. And so this is about nudge strategy, engaging the masses about doing something. And as it says, having everybody feel they can play their part doing whatever, even if it's use one less plastic bottle in a year. And where circular is wider than the environmental side is very much to, so this is about treating resources as very valuable. Energy is one of those, materials another, and waste is the third. So that's what we're looking to do. In terms of creating the first circular economy market town for North Yorkshire, and as far as we can tell, for the UK. So how we're doing it, if you can move on, Kai. I think it's really important to understand is what's stopping people making the changes. You know, it's known what we should be doing, but I'm one of those people who kind of, I am not doing everything that I could or should do. But if we understand whether you're a business or a household, change is always really difficult. You know, the inconvenience of recycling things, or the risk of going to an electric car, or the cost of it, all those things can get in the way. And we hear people say, yeah, and if I just do a small thing, it's not going to make a difference. So we actually have a change strategy going on behind this. If you press 2 more times, Kai, my second bit comes up. Look at this, yeah. So my background is change management, which is helpful, but there's lots of change management models. This one I find the most effective and easiest to kind of follow, but you kind of drive awareness of the need to change, and then desire is something often missed out in changes, and desire is what's in it for me, how will I benefit? And unfortunately, people seeing climate change or saving the planet is far too remote for me versus those pages that I've got. So you've got to make it personal. Then you give people the knowledge, then you drive action, and then it's reinforcement about it working. So that's the model we're following behind this. And if you move on again, and our approach is not to be doing lots and lots of projects or the go-to people for anything to do with environmental change, because there's fantastic groups already in our area and you'll have them in yours. We've got Rydale Environmental Group who are doing fantastic things in a whole number of areas. We've got villages doing things. We've got a local authority with their climate change plan. We've got businesses just on our doorstep doing things that are circular or reducing carbon. So our role is more to drive awareness and education and engage people, and then support and direct people to the other initiatives if they want to get more involved. However, to drive that awareness, we are doing a few big ideas, which is to prompt the dialogue and be kind of so everybody talks about, really, whether it's good or bad, it's about engaging the conversation. And as Jodie said earlier, we have come from a kind of fracking, hotspot where the outcome was a very engaged community. But what it highlights is that important to have the dialogue and acknowledge people's concerns and work with them, or be flexible. And we're nothing to do with any of the fracking or the anti-fracking group, but it highlights the importance of community engagement, which is where these ideas sit from. So if we move on, I think I've kind of tried to share the background, and now I'm going to go into the AD piece. This is how we've created the dialogue. We've used press articles, events that have been put on, or any of those groups events. We've run a webinar with businesses. We've had research where we've done one-to-ones, focus groups and a survey. And every day I'm out and about meeting different people and just talking about it, when I could just share people examples of what they're doing that's already circular. So that's kind of the dialogue piece. And you can see in there, we said, share your views. Here's some ideas. And the first one we had was using our food and bio waste to fuel our own energy, heating and transport with a community AD. And it was just put out there to see what people thought. So, the most of our people don't know what an AD, plant is. And if we go to the next slide, these are three of the initiatives we're doing, but how do you make AD relevant to people? And Gillian, I know, is on the call from NNSCC, who are our expert consultancy group, created that picture on the left, and we realized this is something that's been so powerful as a message, that saying for every sausage roll produced, we just took the waste that comes from making that filling, it will power a laptop for over half an hour. And suddenly people see the power of waste and what an AD project can do. And we've also got 3 fridges and other initiatives, and we didn't want to be taking surplus food from there to our AD project, so we clear where that fits in and so on. But that's been a really powerful message. We've run one to say for businesses, and we've got plans for some social enterprise businesses next year. So that, I think, highlights the kind of how and what we've talked about. But if I now talk about what's been the result with the community, and Kai again. So when we did the survey and we went through pros and cons of being circular, we had almost 9 out of 10 people, and this was Malton residents, Norton residents, and our nearby villages, were in favour of us seeking to become circular. So that's given us the encouragement to go forward. But the next slide shows you their attitude to a community AD project. So 78%, and you can see who's in favour without any reservations and who wants a bit of reassurance. And this was after we'd gone through the potential benefits, but also all the potential concerns that we know people have about AD. And NNFCC shared with us they don't normally see this level of support. And I think that just goes to show you how investing the time and the messaging can help, and being genuine about, you know, this has to work for the community. If the community doesn't want it, we won't do it. So if we move on now, I'm going to show you some of the NNFCC work. And this, there's a quote here that I really like from the Malton business owner, who, when asked about it, as he says there, would put on the record he'd support this, he'd actually positively go to the digester, and he'd pay for the privilege. And, you know, and he's not the only business owner, but it shows that there is real interest in this, as well as with residents. We've also got some feedback as to who they'd like to be running it and owning it and so on. But I just thought I'll show you a few bits of feedback from the NNFCC work when we did the feasibility. And we got funding for that from RCEF. I think if you move on, Kai. And I have to say, I'm a huge fan of the Rural Community Energy Fund, and I know it's been used up now, but just fantastic with the support we got from them to do all this. But this was the project we did with the stage 1, and went through all those elements. And I'm just going to give you a flavour so you get a sense of it. So again, Kai, if you could move on. I told you I'd talk fast. Feedstock, for those of you who haven't worked with the AD, and I'm not technically minded at all, but I've learned that feedstock is the critical part. How much you've got, what its quality is, and how consistent it is the success or failure of AD plants. So, and it's always got to be relevant to your area. So the work that Gillian did was looking at what waste have we got, how much of it, and what is the relative quality, in order to determine the potential shape of our AD plant. And that's where horse manure came in, for example, as something extra that we've got. If you move on, and what came out was we've got 2 potential options to explore. One is combined heat and power, a relatively small unit, which would obviously power local homes, as well as some local manufacturing plants that we've got. However, the downside of that is that funding and support for that is on its way out. Whereas the second option, if you move on, is the biomass to gas. Obviously that's where the focus now is from government. And whilst consumers locally might benefit less directly, and say we could have our own sort of green gas certificate scheme that people could benefit from, it also could be a way that attracts more businesses into the area. And I think potentially we can add on something and actually link it to being a hydrogen kind of filling station as well, depending where we do that. So we've got 2 routes. One would be more medium size. And if you move on again, I think, we looked at 5 sites, which won't mean anything to the majority of people here, but assess them against the energy, the access, how interesting we think, or the site people owners are, and the community benefit. And I should stress the community benefit is because we're planning to have viewing platforms and visits from schools and so on, so that everybody can understand what happens to waste. And there was a great case study that we've seen elsewhere in the UK to look at that. So we've got 2 sites that we're interested in and have engaged the site people on that. And if you move on again, where we are now is we've secured stage 2 funding from RCEF. So we're taking it to the next stage, which will be sort of go, no go, really. Nailing the business plan, will be procuring a developer to go through all the detail and the contracts and putting us forward for planning permission and investor proposals, more community engagement, as well as what we think we will set up is a combined private operator, probably some council, and our CIC will also be part of that because the community wanted us to stay involved. So that's our plan. That will take the next year, and that's underway now. Pause there and just tell you what else. So that's kind of the AD piece, but Kai, if you just move on, I'm just going to finish with my tips generally on this and what we're doing next. And I'd say for community groups, what we'd learned was that having the right people in the team, and we were strangers to each other, but we're all doers rather than talkers, and we are collaborators as kind of a skill set, and project managers. We've done a skills audit of each other and where we've got gaps and who to use for what, and quite a small team of volunteers, all with day jobs. I've shared with you the approach we took and that engagement element, and then it's been finding other champions who help or take your story for you, and we've done lots of work engaging stakeholders and having them come on board at whatever level they want. And the thing that we also learned was we don't have to have the solutions. There's experts out there who do, and we call a lot on the LEP, on other experts to help and really just shape what we need to do. So our role is the engagement piece and how we want to communicate. And so that's how we got started. And next, Kai, a couple more to go. Understand what barriers and what we faced. I've mentioned the resistance to change, which is businesses, households, councils. You know, there's a lot of people who hesitate. So getting stakeholders to act rather than nod has been quite important when there's other priorities, and COVID hasn't helped, but we've done a lot of this during the last 12 months. Reaching the right person, and it's about asking very clearly what it is that we want from them and helping manage their risk for themselves. Funds is always a big ask, and we need it for communication for our projects themselves and project management. And I'd just always say build that in when you're looking at your projects. And we'll be flexible depending what funds are available from what we want to do. And time isn't probably now we can't do more and everything on our plan at the moment because of our time, and particularly governance. Once you get funds, the governance and the project management to make sure it's done properly, there can be no compromise on that. So I think if you press again, Kai, I think my marvellous solution to the barriers is just start with something you're passionate about, because then you don't mind the time that it takes, or passions that your champions have got involved in. Be flexible. We have a 10-year plan, a strategy and plan, but we are flexible as to which way it's being delivered based on what arrives. And to say building in those initiatives when you're looking at funding. And above all, I'd say shout your vision with confidence. So we know a lot of people are now talking about Circular Malton and Norton, and sometimes we say to ourselves, but we haven't done too much yet. But there's a confidence and an excitement about changing behaviours, helping people and being supportive of whatever's happening. And businesses in particular are really, I think, going to be our game changers, as are the schools. And so the last 2 pages, she says, yeah, where to go for support. One thing I'd say is Circular Yorkshire, which is on the LEP site, they're about to launch town guides to help you, which obviously we've helped model, and definitely I'd look at that. They're coming out soon. If you want to engage with businesses, we did a talk to businesses and there's really clear business support. That's my So that's telling me that I've run out of time, but I don't have to turn this bloody thing off now. And community energy England, which Philip was just talking about. So last page is just tell you kind of what our plan on a page. So those are the initiatives. So we've got a 10-year plan. Measuring it is the hardest bit, but that's our focus this year, as well as we're looking at some social enterprise businesses to start. And we've got a project also running, which is getting our schools to go carbon neutral and educating them who are so engaged. So there we go. Sorry, but I just I wanted to give you a flavour and then take questions from different areas, but so you've got the concept.
Thanks, Sue. That was an expert run through of some of the things that you've been working on, some really key points there about success factors in terms of, you know, knowing that you've got the right skills on your board, making sure you've accessed the right support and funding from consultants. There was a point there about resourcing your team properly and the challenge of doing this on a voluntary basis. And there's a couple of questions in the chat that relate to this. So Rosemary Hartill has asked, how have you funded this? I think you covered that with the Rural Community Energy Fund funding, but how many paid staff do you have? Do you have any intention to get paid staff?
We have intention to, but we haven't at the moment. And when we do our kind of skills audit, we also look at time available from some people, and it probably falls to about 3-4 people who are kind of heavy lifting at the moment, but linked with their passion and area. And we kind of just plan accordingly for what we can do. But again, projects like the AD project, a lot of that is outsourced to, in our case, it's NNFCC. So I think that's the key is your funding. It might not be you doing it, it might be somebody else, but you kind of have your master plan. But we've definitely got plans to create jobs from this with people, but we'll probably look for funding to do that initially, etc., and be viable.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great plan. I mean, when you look at the most successful community energy organisations in the country, they all have paid staff. And it's a really intense thing to run an energy generation project, and you need that kind of dedicated time essentially to make it all work. Lots of questions coming in on the chat now as well. I'm going to open it up to the floor and go to Richard Lane, who from York Community Energy, who has a question.
Oh, okay, yeah, I can ask it verbally if you want. So just wondering how how the payments work. Do you pay for feedstock, or do you get paid as an urban digester for collecting other people's waste that they presumably would have to pay for it to be disposed of commercially otherwise?
Yeah. So just to be clear, we haven't got the AD up and running yet. This is the phase. So we've had the kind of the response, which is we're interested, we would pay, etc. And what Gillian and the team are doing now in this second stage is nailing that down, looking in the eyes. And from what I understand from other organisations or other ADs, it depends on the quality of the feedstock. So I know that business owner who said they'd pay us. At the moment, they don't have to pay because it's so valuable. So he's actually putting a value to them on having something local that he'd pay for. And others obviously they do pay us. So it will be a spectrum of people depending on that feedstock.
Can I just add that to that as well?
Yeah.
So if we were to collect food waste, which is one of the things that we're hoping to do, although it would cost a bit more to process it, we would get some more revenue because you'd be able to be paid a gate fee so that it wouldn't go to landfill, because obviously then you're not having to pay landfill tax. So some of the food waste we do get, we would get some income from that, and then depends on what the other feedstock is, as you said. So
thanks
Gillian. Okay, so there are a few more questions on the chat. Would anyone else like to ask a question verbally? And if you do, please use the raise hand function on Zoom so that I can see you raising your hand. Amy Trevelyan.
Hello, I have met you before.
Yeah, hi Nelly.
I'm interested in how much this locks you into creating waste, and whether there is a danger of locking us into intensive farming methods that may be going out with the next new farming directions. Low carbon farming might not produce so much intensive pig house muck or intensive chicken house muck.
It's a good question, and I think as we look at the feasibility, and Gillian will probably add to this, was it's looking at a range of feedstocks, so we're not reliant on farming feedstock. And ultimately, you don't want waste. We don't want food waste, but I think it's being realistic that there will be some. I think the community engagement education bit will put waste kind of front of mind. So I think that itself might lead to less waste and people are more careful about it. But I think I don't believe we will be locked in, but also in parallel, there's initiatives going on like regenerative farming. And I've just read about McCain, who are doing that globally. Well, they're a big player locally in crops and so on. So I'm hoping, and that's part of what we'll be promoting, is regenerative farming and so on. So hopefully it all works in sync as opposed to locks us into extremes. And our size is not going to be so big that it becomes a machine either. Is there anything I've missed on that, Gillian? Yeah.
I'd just like to add another bonus for farmers on this, because it's related to this point. One of the sort of outputs from the digester is the biofertilizer, which is packed with nutrients, and instead of farmers spreading their own cow manure on their farm and then it's smelling and it's not as nutrient like concentrated as the biofertilizer, they would give us the cow manure. But then obviously you raise the point that what if they just then have to use more fertilizer, or maybe it's worse for their farm, but because they'd get this biofertilizer back if they want one, potentially for free or at very low cost, or with a trade situation where we get their cow manure for free or something, then they'd actually improve their soil rather than having to rely on shop bought fertilizer. So that would be a cost-effective solution that's like a win-win situation, and therefore it would reduce the problems with getting nutrients back into their soil after farming it every year.
Thanks, guys. Okay, I'm going to take one last question from the chat, and we'll try and answer the rest of the questions in the break on the chat. But there's a question from Jake on the chat. Jake, would you like to ask this question verbally?
Thanks, Jodie. It's more general about engaging communities, and I liked your theory change. It's a very high level question about how you engage people in the net zero challenge. Do you create a vision for the end game, if you like, which is hopefully a positive one, and then work towards that, or is that too big a thing to get their heads around, for people to get their heads around? And are you better starting small and building momentum?
It's a really good question, and my view would be it's too big and unable to be reached. So if you're looking at different targets, you can make it relevant to them. So businesses, for me, is a good example where what's in their head is I know I should, either because I want to and I can see the positives, or I'm going to be taxed if I don't. So the question, it's almost setting them a question, which is, how do you drive profitable growth and reduce your carbon? And suddenly that's a question they've got like a need to be answered, and you've engaged them. With schools, and we're going to talk to some students, it's saying, how can you play a part and make a difference in Malton? And so you do tailor it. I always think with a question, with an answer, although they're all actions going in the same direction, if that makes sense, but it's just how it's positioned.
Brilliant, thanks for that. I'm going to stop it there so that we don't run into our coffee break too much. I'm going to send you all off to forage in your kitchens and hopefully find some tasty treats or a sausage roll maybe. But yeah, we'll see you back here at 3:10. and do carry on using the chat function. We'll try and aim to respond to some of those questions in that over the break. See you at 3:10. So welcome back, everyone. If you could just pop your camera on when you're back so that we can see that we've retrieved you all from your kitchens. Did anyone find a sausage roll, vegan or otherwise?
No cake.
No cake, sad times. I'm sorry to hear that, Amy. Commiserations.
I suppose I'd have had to put it in there if I was to find it, but I didn't.
True, true. Sometimes it's best not to provide that temptation.
Ginger biscuits.
Not bad, not bad. Were there any sausage rolls, vegan or otherwise? No. Cereal bar, thank you, very healthy.
There are sausage rolls in our fridge, but as we do keep a few pigs, there often are.
Excellent. Well, you get all the bonus points, Sue. Well done. Fantastic. All right.
Wasn't tempted.
Well, welcome back, everyone. We are about to pop you into your breakout sessions. Don't worry, you don't have to do anything. It will happen automatically, and this is the sessions that you pre-selected. So when you registered for this forum, you will have expressed an interest in one of these subjects. So buying back existing projects is going to be with Jake, partnering with local authorities is going to be with Helen, solar for schools is going to be with Shannon, and wind turbines is going to be with Dave. So we're going to pop you into those breakouts now, and then we will gather you all back together at the end to wrap up just before 4 o'clock. Welcome back, everyone. I hope you didn't get kicked out too abruptly from your sessions and that they were useful discussions. You got the questions answered that you needed to have answered. If you didn't, you can post the questions in the chat and we will still do our best to answer them for you. Hopefully you got lots from all of the experts we've invited to chat to you today. Such a wealth of knowledge, and certainly what I was experiencing in our breakout was the kind of cross fertilization of lots of different people in our breakout room having the knowledge and the detailed understanding of what needs to happen in our energy system to make it net zero. So we're going to get a little bit of feedback from some of the rest of the groups briefly. So Kai, let's go to you first. If you can sum up very briefly what happened in your conversation, that'd be great.
Yeah, sure. So me and Jake were running the Buying Back Existing Projects workshop. I think it's fair to say a lot of people in the group didn't have a lot of experience doing this sort of thing, so community purchase of existing projects. So a lot of the time was spent just hearing from Jake's experience of how these things work and how communities can sort of go about purchasing projects and some of the benefits that are there for, especially, you know, from a developer's point of view, why would they partner with a community and what stage is best to approach a developer at? So yeah, some really interesting insight from Jake, and good to hear what sort of other people in the group, what sort of projects they're planning as well.
Brilliant. Thanks, Kai. Mark, how did your group get on?
Yeah, thanks, Jodie. Yeah, really interesting. I think we ended with me saying thank you. You've made this really interesting and really easy for me because I didn't have to say a lot. We had a lot of really interesting chat. Some great, I think, advice and experience shared by Shannon and by Andy. Yeah, I guess the key things that came across were that things are definitely have been more challenging since the changes in FIT and the changes with business rates, but that it's still very much possible to do these projects, and that a big thing that local groups can do is sort of building that relationship and building trust with schools to sort of bring that idea to them, and then Solar for Schools have got, you know, all that experience and expertise to support them in delivering their project. So it seems like a really sort of positive way of working together to deliver you know, renewable projects as well as community education projects. So yeah, we had really interesting chats, and I think lots of follow-up conversations will be had from what I can gather. So very good.
Good, thanks Mark. Prina.
Thanks, JD. So we were talking about wind, and Dave told us about his project, that the wind turbine is coming up next year, which is very exciting. But we did a lot of practical advice as well, from the engagement side to actually how to find a wind, like a site, to also, yeah, by building up the plan and how to do that. And we had lots of people very interested and also doing their own projects as well. So yeah, overall very, very interesting.
Yep, similar in our group, we started off talking about wind and decarbonisation of community buildings. We talked about the challenges of working at a smaller scale, and the fact that we want local authorities and Northern Powergrid to support us with that collaboration more. Definitely those challenges of working on small scale projects and the feasibility of those came up a lot. We talked about collaboration across borders. How do you get local authorities to collaborate across borders if you're in different local authority areas and working across those borders? Grid connections, we talked a lot about grid connections being prohibitively expensive for some of the projects that communities in this patch want to develop. We talked about microgrids, how we need more help with planning, and how we want more kind of tailored local solutions. So really useful feedback there, and some really key points that I think certainly I'll be putting in my report back to Northern Powergrid to of what they can do to support this sector and support this this movement to grow. So thank you all for that. I hope you did get your questions answered. That leaves me just to sum up briefly from today. I think it's been absolutely fascinating to hear all our speakers. Thank you so much to all of you for providing all of your expertise and insights. I know particularly to Sue, who has probably spent a lot of time planning for today. Thank you to you, and thank you to all the experts in the breakouts as well. Your kind of knowledge and enthusiasm and inspiration you bring to all of us are invaluable. Thank you to the Regen team as well. Kai, Prina, Hannah, Mark, all put a lot of work in behind the scenes to make these things run smoothly. Thank you to you. They've just popped up the poll magically, so if you can fill that in whilst I'm chatting, that'd be really helpful. You know, all of these forums are informed by the feedback that you give us, so please do fill that in and scroll down, make sure you fill in all the questions whilst you're at it. Thank you as well to Northern Powergrid. Northern Powergrid have been exemplary in how they have supported this movement, and I think that shows really brightly from the increase in groups that we know about in Northern Powergrid's area. You know, when we started this work and writing the strategy with them a few years ago, there were only a handful of groups engaging with Northern Powergrid, and now we know about so many more of you out there, and there are more coming out of the woodwork all the time. So that's really fantastic to see. And I think, you know, some of the stuff that Philip was talking about earlier about how we can help convene and help that network build and collaborate is going to be essential to the future of this movement, because community energy is fundamental to the low carbon transition. We can't decarbonise our energy system without bringing people with us and making sure that everyone is involved and benefiting. And we really, really don't want to leave anyone behind. So thank you to all of you for making sure that no one is left behind. I think some of the discussions in my group are really around that, you know, some of the work that you guys are out there on the ground doing, going into people's homes, helping people retrofit, getting out and talking to people through education projects. All of that work is part of this movement of making sure that no one is left behind, and that is down to you guys. So thank you all for giving up your time. Thanks for spending this afternoon with us. I hope you've enjoyed it. I hope you found it useful. And as I say, please do fill in that feedback. I think that pretty much covers it. Anda, is there anything you would like to say to follow up?
Thank you so much for the participants in the very very kind of fast-paced, good discussions we've had today. I'm hoping that you all take something you can use and apply, and something that that you learned today and is useful. But I also want to really extend thanks to the team at Region. In the beginning, I summarized what we've done across the last year, and it really has been a team effort, and you've been absolutely instrumental in this, providing the expertise and the capacity to both run our forums as well as other events. And I'm hoping that the participants of this event will return to the next event, which we're hosting, Jodie, can you correct me on, in September, and we continue to inform what events and what support you require, so we can tailor that accordingly, and that it is useful for you. But thank you very much for joining us today. Real pleasure, and I'll listen to all the discussions and questions with great interest. Thank you.
Brilliant. So that forum is on the 16th of September. Hopefully one of our team will post the link in the chat to that, so you can sign up for that and hopefully join us then. Don't forget to obviously take part in the rest of the stuff going on during Community Energy Fortnight. And I can see Helen's got her hand up for some final words.
Oh gosh, that's a big lead in, isn't it? Yeah, big thank you to everybody. I just wanted to know, thanks for feedback, Mike, and I'll follow up on that with regard to the discussion around constraints. But also I've noted, importantly, the bit about microgrids, battery storage. I'd also put retrofit on there. And it's my job to make sure that, working with Regen, that we put these in place and end up having really interesting conversations like this one. So they're on my list. Okay, thank you. That's really appreciated, everyone.
Thanks, Helen. Thanks, Anda. And thanks to all of you for joining us. We'll hopefully see you back here in September. Take care. Bye.